Jessie, thanks for being here. Jessie is our type 6 and wanted to just pick her brain about what it means to be a type 6. So first, Jessie, why don't you tell us we know your name, but kind of who you are, what you do, what's your living situation, tell us about your dog, things like that.
I should have had him in here, but then he'd probably end up barking at really bad times. So he is not joining us today. He's here in spirit.
Mhm.
But I am Jessie, like you said. I'm an administrative assistant for a middle school here in town. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I do for work. But I've known you, Danielle, for a long time, it seems, through a couple different churches, and kind of bonded with some of our own like entrepreneur stuff that I was doing for a while.
Yeah.
My living situation, I've been married for almost 7 months, um, living with my husband Corey and our dog Boomer. He's a mini golden doodle.
It's very
And
cute. Mm.
yes, he is very cute. He
Mhm.
makes a great cuddle buddy.
I was noting last night in a picture, this is probably not anything anyone else needs to hear, but he's like a big moose. That's what he looks like. Like
Kind of.
moose. That's my dog. Yeah. All right. What drew you to the Enneagram? So your story is a little interesting. I think people will be interesting to hear kind of your road to for confirming type 6. So
What initially drew me to the Enneagram was just hearing about it all the time. I've always been interested in personality tests. I can't always remember what my results are because sometimes just the way they're generated is like hard to remember. If it's a weird code or if there are a lot of different types, I can't always remember. But I find the process and I find the idea of typing not to categorize but to help you understand yourself and other people better really interesting. And so when I heard about the Enneagram from different authors and different bloggers, and on podcasts, I was like, ooh, that's interesting. I kind of like that. And it was hard for me to figure out what type I actually am. There are things in a lot of the different types that I identify with. And it was kind of a long road. And I thought I figured it out and then realized that I didn't actually, that it was different than what I thought and what everyone else had thought. So it was a very strange and
yeah,
long path that I had to have some patience with.
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
been really fun. It was something that I really enjoyed digging deeper into, and something that I want to continue learning more about.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll talk about this, but one of the types you thought you were first after my certification, I came back and I had no doubt that that was your type. But then we did a sit down when you were getting married. You and Corey did it, and I was surprised by your actual confirmation moving to the 6. So
Yeah.
I can't wait for you to talk a little bit about that. But then, so how did you figure out your type? You said there was kind of a long journey. So what really helped you? What was like a glaring, now I know I'm a 6 kind of thing?
I've heard a lot of people say that the online assessments are not the most effective and it's really easy to mistype. So I didn't do that, but I listened to a whole bunch of podcasts where guests that were authors about the Enneagram or people who are like professional Enneagram coaches or something, people that really know what they're talking about, were explaining the different types, and I read about them and just tried to figure out what kind of identified with me and the way that I'm wired and the reasons why I do what I do. And I read some books about it, and then we had that meeting with you, Danielle, as part of our premarital counseling. And I think that more personal connection was really what kind of catalyzed the discovery, like, oh wait, I'm not the number that I thought I was. Because it is really easy to just look at behaviors and attribute it to a certain number and not necessarily look at the underlying motivations.
Yeah.
But when you sit down and you talk to people and you go through things more slowly, and you were asking me like, well, why do you think that is, or like, where do you think that comes from? And so sitting down with those and digging a little bit deeper, I think was what really changed things.
Yeah, I think that can be really helpful for anyone who is like struggling. Am I really this type? Or I don't know, I'm struggling between two types, is really sitting down with someone who knows the Enneagram, but it can also ask those kind of motivation questions more than the behavior.
Yeah.
So, um, what have you learned about yourself since discovering that you are a type 6?
I think just thinking about the motivation behind what I do was really important for me, um, because it makes it a lot easier for me to notice when I am doing certain things and pay attention to what I am being motivated by, not just what I'm doing. So when I'm being motivated by perfectionism, or when I feel like I have to make the right decision about something and I'm stressing about making a really good decision, or when I spend way too much time researching things like what kind of shampoo or laundry detergent to buy. These are not life changing decisions, but I will spend like an hour on Amazon looking at prices and ratings, and then I'll look them up like on the environmental working group to like see how toxic they are. Like, I spend way too much time on things like that because I have a really strong five wing. But
Mhm.
just kind of learning more about these things helps me recognize when I'm doing that. And then I'm like, okay, this has gone too far. Like, need to slow down a little bit.
Mhm.
And I think before I really knew that, I didn't pay as much attention to what I was doing or why I was doing it. So
Yeah,
it really just helps increase that self awareness.
sure.
And helps me kind of catch myself a little bit sooner and hopefully, not always, but hopefully, like redirect that behavior and those thought patterns.
Yeah, and there's some, I always like to say, your strength is also can be overdone and turns into a weakness. So there's some strength in what you're doing, but learning that maybe you could just buy, the shampoo you bought last time, that would be
Yeah.
spoken like a true type 3. But okay, um, how has confirming your type helped you grow spiritually, like in your faith walk?
It has really just reminded me how much I need to rely on God because I can't plan everything and I can't control everything as much as I really, really want to most of the time. I was going to say sometimes, but it's actually most of the time. So yeah, I have to rely on him. I can't do that. That's not my job, which is actually a good thing. I don't actually want that job, if I think about it, but it's really helpful to know that I can rely on him and that I don't have to control everything and make it work out in the end. And that if I make a mistake, if I get the wrong shampoo, or if I took a job and then realized actually this wasn't a good fit for me, it's not the end of the world either. um, and it with people too, it really just helps me recognize like how I'm acting in relationships,
Mm.
and when I'm trying to control things or get my way, or when I'm withdrawing, because I do have that really strong five wing. So in conflict I often withdraw, or when I'm just like stressed, or when I've had a really tough day or something, my first reaction is usually to pull back. And I do need to have those boundaries to kind of conserve energy sometimes, or recognize like when I need some time to myself. And so learning more about my type has really helped me have um, confidence in creating those kind of boundaries, and given me some more language to talk to people about that and have conversations and say like, okay, this is what I need, like how do we work this out, how do we build that in here, just so that I'm not like frustrated with being wired that way, but that I can work with it.
Yeah, that's good inner work, to be honest, for any of us to know, okay, how do we communicate what we really need with our people? So that's really great. Um, what do you love about being your type?
I love how loyal I am, and the fact that I think things through instead of acting super impulsively. I mean, that probably has its place, but that's not really how I act most of the time. And I kind of like that, the fact that I'm organized just in my personal life, but also like in my home and at work, and being able to support people with those kind of skills. I like that the fact that I think things through and that I'm a planner and that I care a lot about safety also makes me a good caretaker and a thoughtful person and friend. So yeah, I think those are all good traits about being a six.
Mhm. So what do you wish were different? Like, what do you not like about being a six? Is there anything?
Yeah. The really heightened anxiety is not something that I love. And I'm sure everyone experiences it a little bit differently. And I think some of it, a lot of it probably is attributed to being a six, but some of it is also maybe just me personally and the way I experience it. But it's something that's really challenging, and it's not something that I can just turn off, and it's not something that I can just stop. If someone says, "Oh, don't worry," like that doesn't magically make me not worry about something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that can be challenging. There's been some actually really helpful conversation about anxiety and depression and other things that are similar or related
Yeah.
in recent years. So that's been helpful too. I think just greater understanding for people. But yeah, that's not an easy thing to be walking around with.
Mhm. Yeah, I think for if you're watching this and you're not a type six, sixes really struggle with anxiety way more than the rest of us. So sixes anxiety tends to be a little more generalized, like, you're kind of scanning the horizon typically. I don't know if you can assert if this is true, to see what possibly could go wrong and then how to be prepared for it, where the rest of us have maybe particular anxieties that something really sets us off, but we're not kind of processing it a lot. I know I have a friend who's a six, and I can literally hear her thinking all the time about things. And so that can be really hard for the six. So the rest of us can have that compassion. And what doesn't help them is to tell them not to be afraid or to try to fix it. So
Yeah.
really helping them process through their anxiety and giving them the space for that is a great tip for those of us non-sixes. So
Yes. And I don't feel like I personally am one that has like a very pessimistic or like
mhm,
doom and gloom kind of outlook. I don't generally jump to the worst case scenario, but I would say I probably am thinking through the consequences like, well, oh, if that doesn't work, do we have a plan B?
mhm,
Like, not like putting all my faith in plan A because I'm very well aware that it might not work out. And so I need a contingency plan and I need an emergency fund and like all kinds of things
yeah.
set up in case something falls through. And do worry about, like having enough time, enough money, enough talent, and whether or not I'm making the right decisions about things.
Mhm,
So it is interesting too, just how it can show up in certain ways in different people's lives, because I hear a lot about how sixes often kind of do consider the worst case scenario, or they like think about that a lot. And I don't know that that's super specific to me. So that's an interesting thing to think about too, just how it varies a little bit from person to person.
I would say I hear that a lot, and I started using that, except that most sixes I've coached with don't resonate with that at all. But they would resonate with the I'm being prepared for something that could, and that's also your strength that can get overdone. So
Mm-hmm.
knowing and being able to see, okay, this might not work. Have we thought this through?
Yeah.
Is real strength for sixes, analytical problem solving. But it can also affect your everyday life, and so kind of balancing that is such a great piece. So, mhm. Okay, um, nothing is worse than when I feel.
Small. If I feel like I'm being ignored or like people aren't listening to me, that's really challenging.
Mhm,
I've had people in personal and professional settings that don't communicate the way I communicate, maybe without trying to put everything on them,
yeah.
but recognizing my role in it too. There have just been a lot of conversations and situations in which I feel like people have literally talked over me, like while I'm talking, or not really answered my question, but answered what they thought I was asking,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
repeated them. I don't know. if you say something and then they react like they didn't even hear what you just said, it's really challenging for me to feel like, well, wait a minute, did you hear what I even said? I think it just goes back kind of to feeling like, do you even care what I have to say? Do you care that I'm here? Am I contributing anything? Because I think I really just want to feel like I'm valued in that relationship, for not because like I'm the smartest or the most talented or anything, but just because I'm there and I'm a part of it and I want to be included and I want to be a part of it, and not feel like I'm being treated like my opinion or my place or my voice don't matter in that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important. So that's good. Thank you. How has understanding your arrows and wings helped you? So if you haven't seen any of the other videos, arrows and wings are arrows will indicate kind of what you do in stress. You'll move across the Enneagram diagram to a different number. And then growth will be a different number as well. So you usually have an arrow to two numbers. And then your wings are the numbers on either side of your adjacent to your number. So Jesse's wings can be a 5 or a 7. So how has that helped you kind of know kind of what to look for in stress and growth and your wings?
I have a really strong 5 wing, so much so that I like think I'm kind of like Nemo, where like he has one fin that's really little and one that's like normal size. And I think like my 7 wing might be kind of small and my 5 wings like really big. So maybe they're more like fins. But anyway, um, so my 5 wing is so strong that you and I, Danielle, actually went back and forth quite a bit and were looking things up to figure out if I was a 5 with a 6 wing or 6 with a 5 wing for a while,
Mhm.
because so much of the like social interaction piece and like how I respond to conflict and stress, whether I like reach out or withdraw. But um, it's really helped me feel like I fit a little bit better, because trying to identify with just one number can feel a little bit challenging, because it maybe doesn't feel like it um, covers everything. Not that even two numbers can cover everything about your personality, but it feels like a better fit if you can say like, oh, well, this is me, but I also, have this part of this thing, which is really cool. And so I think it just covers a wider variety of things and paints a more full picture. And it also really just helps me think about the way I research a lot of things and the way I tend to overthink things a lot. And then the way that I have to kind of budget my energy and put those boundaries around social interactions and kind of know my own limits and be okay with that. So it just helps me understand that parts of my personality. And then um, I've thought some about arrows. I haven't read as much about them, but I remember when we were looking at it for premarital counseling, I was looking at it a bit more. And as a 6, when I'm stressed, I actually tend to exhibit more behaviors that are generally characteristic of a 3.
Mhm.
And I've seen that so much. When I'm stressed, I become even more task oriented, because I just want to get things done because it's what I can do. It's what I can control,
Mhm.
and it keeps me busy. And so I don't have to think as much about how I'm feeling or what I can't control or what I can't do or whatever. Um, and so accomplishing things is good, but if I'm running to it because I don't want to deal with what's actually going on, then it's not so great because it's going to catch up with me eventually. Um, so that's kind of interesting to see too. Like, I've always known that I'm more of a task driven person, but it's interesting being able to see how I leaned into that even more when I'm stressed.
Yeah.
And then when I'm in a healthier place, I actually go toward 9, which is kind of funny because both my best friend and my husband are 9s. And I've seen a lot of similarities between the two of them, but I also become more like them when I'm less stressed and when I'm in a good place and when I'm relaxed. I can have a lot more fun. I can worry less about things. I can take a more lighthearted approach and say, yeah, that's not great, but I believe that it'll be okay. Or like, okay, well, we'll figure something out. We'll do something about it without having to like worry about whether this job is secure or my relationship is secure, or without feeling that like need for safety and security.
Mhm.
Um, so that's been like really interesting.
Yeah.
Having that influence from both of them has been really good for me. I think bringing out that nine side.
So just as a reminder for everyone watching, so the wings are really unique in that they can kind of explain why maybe you don't feel like you fully fit into one type. So if you like Jessie was wrestling for a while between 5 and 6, so her a strong 5 wing would explain why she has some 5 tendencies, but is probably more motivated by the 6. So looking at that core motivation is really important. But you can pick that up. People can also have an equal relationship with their wings. So, Jessie could also have a 5 and a 7 wing and be equal, but I like how she described the fins, so her 5 wing is definitely stronger. So she would probably be more dominant in that. But she, and then the stress arrows are really good. One as a red flag for us to know, like when we're stressing out, but also to understand how we grow as well, and what we can choose to borrow from. We have that connection. So Jessie can choose the positive traits of both of those 3s and 9s too, because she has that connection. So of that. How do you do life differently in, since you, is there any changes you've made since you learned you were 6 in your life, in your relationships, in your work? Is there anything that has changed or shifted? This might be kind of a similar question to what we've already answered, but
I feel like I've become more comfortable saying no to things and putting boundaries around like social interactions in particular that will kind of drain my energy, and understanding where those boundaries need to be. Like if Corey and I need to take separate cars to get together because he's going to want to stay like 2 hours longer than I will, it's just a lot easier for us to take separate vehicles, and then I can leave when I need to and he can stay and hang out with people. Or when we have several social things planned with friends or family who are in town for back to back to back days, knowing that I'm going to need to make time in those days to be by myself. As much as I love people, it's just not sustainable for me and it's really draining.
mm,
Um, so that's
that's
been something that I've had to become more comfortable with and not just force myself to do what I think other people want, because actually they're really understanding.
yeah.
And so talking about it more has helped me realize like, oh, they're not going to be mad at me or like disappointed in me. They'll understand. It's fine.
Mm,
So that's been really good. And I think too, I've been more comfortable leveraging my organizational skills in certain ways, whether that's through providing resources to help people like declutter and organize their homes,
mhm,
or learn how to meal plan and meal prep, or whether it's organizing stuff in my role as the admin assistant at the school that I work for. Those things have been really fun to do, and kind of recognizing, oh, that's not something everyone's skilled with.
mhm,
So it just opens up more of an opportunity for me to offer that to help other people. Um, Learning that it is something that's a bit more unique because I just grew up with it. It was normal for me. So it's been really good for me to realize that's not
yeah.
something that is universal. Um, and I've been having more conversations with people about anxiety, and it's really helpful to have language to support those conversations.
Mm,
And I think it's been really helpful too to realize that everyone has things, whether it's anxiety or not. We're all wired differently, but there are enough similarities that
yeah.
it's really good to foster those conversations and just talk to people about what's going on and what they're struggling with, and how you can be kind of reorienting your perspective so that you're not just like, oh my gosh, why did they say that? Like, or why did they think that? That seems so strange, or I just don't get it. realizing that, well, there's a reason, even if it's not something that inherently makes sense to you. But starting those conversations is really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that's so good because I think, it makes you a little bit more aware of the process too. And I just going to even say on the organization, sixes are the great preparers. Like they really know how to prepare and organize the rest of us. And so I love that about you guys is that not all of us are that, thoughtful and organized and thinking through things. And so I know for me, I have a friend who's a close friend who's a six, and she can't even fathom how much I don't think through things. And I just move without thinking. And so it's really, to really own those good things that you bring to the table. I love how you've done that, for sure. Um, what do you want the rest of us to know about being a type six?
I think just kind of what we touched on before, that anxiety isn't something that you can just turn off. You can't just say, well, Hakuna Matata, like, don't worry about it, it'll be fine, in a flippant way. I mean, if you say it like genuinely, like,
Yeah.
no, I understand, but it actually will be okay, that's different than just like, don't worry about it. Um, but also that it helps, at least for me, to talk about it. So figuring out how to engage with people in whatever way they're most comfortable with, but knowing that having people around helps, because we do like to plan and try to do things, but we can't do it all on our own. So we do need other people in it with us.
Mm, yeah, that's really good. Um, how has it helped your relationships? How has it helped you to, and maybe you've already touched on this, but um, knowing your type, cultivating self-awareness, how has it helped you in your relationships?
I think it's made me slower to judge.
Mm,
It's also made me examine my motivations for why I do and say what I do. So if I'm annoyed with someone for a perceived slight, or feeling like they ignored me, or if they said something and I interpreted it as being mildly insulting or something, um, thinking about, okay, what actually happened and how did I interpret that, like, through the lens that I view the world with, am I coloring that in a way that makes it feel like I'm insecure in this relationship, or I'm not valued at work, or like, my opinion here doesn't matter, and trying to take a more objective view, and also recognizing, well, they could be upset about something else, or maybe they didn't mean it that way, maybe they were trying to be helpful and it just came out a little wonky. So just trying to like pull things apart a little bit before I like spiral with anxiety or anger or frustration or whatever. Just trying to recognize, okay, there's more than just like my initial perception of this, and I need to think about how it was intended and recognize that there's another person involved here, and they probably the vast majority of the time did not mean to hurt my feelings or make me feel insecure or whatever the case may be.
mhm.
So just trying to pause and think through that. I think being aware of my tendency to feel insecure and to worry, and um, even to like withdraw when I'm upset, kind of helps me recognize, like, oh, okay, I need to think about this before I like freak out internally about it.
Yeah, that's good. Um, what do you need from your people to be the healthiest version of you?
I think something that really helps is just having reassurance that people aren't going anywhere. Um, I
Yeah.
mean, yes, people can like move, and certain relationships are more for a season, but like your close people, like my real people in my life, it's really helpful to hear that they're not going anywhere.
Mm,
That even if we disagree about something, or even if we don't see each other for a while, what have you, whatever happens, like, that they're in it for the long haul, and that they're by my side and on my side. just because then I don't have to worry about, well, what if we disagree about this thing? Or what if we don't see eye to eye? Or like, are they gonna like find another friend and replace me if I haven't seen them in 6 months? Like, it just kind of helps calm a lot of those fears. And I don't know that they're like front of mind most of the time, but I think they're underlying in a lot of things. Just feeling mildly insecure in relationships impacts conversations with people, and it
Mhm.
can affect how you relate to them and make you feel like you have to earn their friendship or fight for their friendship. And so knowing that they're there just kind of makes everything calmer, and you can actually just enjoy your relationship with them and not worry about whether it's going to go away if you don't see them, or if you send them a gift that they don't think is funny and are offended by, or like if
Yeah.
you somehow get to talking about politics and they don't agree with you. Like, it just kind of helps create that underlying tie of security. And then I think I've been blessed with a lot of friends that believe what I believe. And so hearing from them when things are tough, or when I just don't understand what's going on, or when I'm struggling with something, having reminders from them that God's got it all under control, even when I don't understand it, even when it's messy, even when it's long or frustrating, or um, whatever adjective might describe those seasons of life.
Yeah.
Getting those reminders from people is really helpful too, because sometimes we're not in a place where we can really hold on to those things or believe them for ourselves, and so getting that affirmation from other people is really helpful too.
Yeah. That's good. Um, Couple last questions. One is, what has helped you grow in your Enneagram number? Like, are there resources that you really love as a type 6? Are there books you've read? Like, what?
um I love all of it, really. There are episodes of podcasts that have been great. I know Annie F. Downs did her Enya summer last summer, and I've heard that she's going to do it again this summer, so I'm really excited. Um, so that was really fun because she had like a whole episode dedicated to each number. And even just like Instagram posts from you and Beth, and there are some other people that I follow too, but those are really great. And then I read The Path Between Us.
Yeah. I
I
think I
think
recommended that to you guys after your
you did.
premarital counseling. Yeah.
Um, I feel like there was another one I read too that I'm blanking on at the moment, but I think they're all really great. And I'm not great at it, but I found some benefits in journaling and just trying to like flesh out my thoughts, because if anyone else is like me, some of it probably goes with the like overthinking and the anxious stuff, but
Yeah.
my brain just moves so fast that I can't even always figure out like the underlying things if I don't slow down. And so writing it down really helps me slow down because I can only write so fast.
Good.
So when things are like particularly frustrating, or when thoughts are just like swirling around in my head and they like won't stop, just going in circles, it's really helpful to write it down and work on things through journaling or through having like a conversation. Like, you're really good about asking further questions, like, well, why do you think that is, or where do you think that's coming from, or that kind of thing. I know we've had some really good chats about things like that that get me thinking a little bit
Yeah.
deeper.
And I think if you're watching this at home and you're part of the community, but you haven't done formal typing with a coach, that's really great questions to keep asking yourself. Why do I do what I do? And kind of process that, journal that. Um, that can be really helpful for any type. Some types of us don't really like journaling. It takes too long. But, but that can be really helpful to like slow it down and ask why, and keep asking the why, even though you feel like you've answered it. Dig underneath the iceberg kind of thing. All right, last question, Jesse. Anything else you'd like to tell us about being the 6, or think we should know, or even people who aren't sure if they're 6? Any thoughts?
Well, it's really easy to mistype yourself and others, which is why we're not supposed to type others.
Yes.
Initially, I thought, and pretty much everybody thought, that I was like the poster child for a type one because I am so organized and so type A, and I like to have everything planned. And I think there's a right way to do basically everything. But when you look at the motivations, my need to like have everything organized and planned is
Yeah.
so that I can feel secure and feel like I'm not going to be bombarded with unexpected things that I don't know how to deal with. Not so much that like I think everyone needs to do things the right way because that's the right way to do it. It's more like, well, but I want to do things the right way because like that's the way I'm supposed to, and what's going to happen if I don't? Like I don't want to find out.
Yes.
So like prevent bad outcomes theoretically if I do things the right way. It doesn't because no one's perfect. But
Yeah.
um just really paying attention to the motivation behind things. And then I think giving yourself grace and giving everybody grace
Yeah.
um is super important. Like and being patient with the journey if it does take you a little while to figure it out
Mhm.
um is helpful too, and not feeling like you have to rush it. There's not a deadline for figuring it out, right? It's a tool to help you understand yourself and lean into your strengths and work to kind of improve upon the areas in which you maybe struggle. It's not like something to check off as an accomplishment.
I will say Americans in general want to know right away. They just want to take a test and know. And I know for myself, it took me months too to figure out which type I was because I had some similarities in some areas. And ones and sixes tend to be a common mistype because they actually show up very similarly.
Mm-hmm.
They're both pretty prepared, detail oriented, organized. And so thinking through that, that it can take a while. And so it's really what you ended up doing was really good inner work to say, why do I do that? Instead of just I do this. But I thought you were one too. And so for a while and I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yes.
It's
Well, and
not
I have a friend who's a one,
yeah.
and like a mutual friend of ours, and she and I look quite a bit alike if you look at the way we behave and the way we want things done and how we organize things. But if you sit us down and talk to us about it, we have different reasons.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's really good. So, one thing, so I'm just starting to actually interview for these videos, and last night I interviewed the one, and one of the things she said that was helpful for her is the Enneagram Institute has a type comparison on their website under Learn, where it compares. So, if you're struggling between 6 and 1 or 6 and another number, um, great resource for you to kind of look and see what they say about the different comparisons and what that will look like. So, just a little
Awesome.
add on to this video. All right, so Jesse, thank you for sharing your
Thank
type
you.
6 with us. And yeah, we're so glad you were here.
I am too. Thanks for having me.